Minister, Aontú is a party of fiscal and social responsibility, and these two policies are often presented by the government as opposites, but they're not. You can be fiscally responsible and socially responsible at the same time. It is possible for a country to provide in terms of housing, health, education, transport, communications and the environment, and yet be fiscally responsible. It simply means that there is a provision of key resources, and those key resources are consistent and that they're fair in their delivery. It also means that expenditure is carried out in the most efficient and effective way. Now, if you look at the history of this state and the history of the parties that expound the most the idea of fiscal responsibilities, you actually look at the political parties that have crashed this country most in terms of finances before. So let's look at the expenditure side. The National Children's Hospital, the National Broadband Scheme, for example, are examples of decisions and deliveries which are not fiscally responsible. They're physically irresponsible in a gross fashion in that they cost the state massively over budget. Fianna Fáil in the noughties dressed themselves up as the party of economic and physical expertise, while at the same time they drove the country off an economic cliff. Fine Gael too dressed themselves in the clothes of fiscal responsibility. But however, you as a party continue to bail out the banks even after the EU stated that bail-ins were a logical thing to do. So when the EU said that the Cypriot bank bail-in was the right thing to do, you continued as a party to deliver the old system of the bailout to a massive cost that we're still paying for today. Fine Gael allow for massive fiscal exposures to continue as well. So we have a big dependency on FDI. Now, FDI is a positive thing. We welcome FDI, but our country is far too heavily dependent on FDI within the economy at the moment. And the indigenous sectors have never been developed to the state that there should be developed. In actual fact, Minister, in most countries, FDI is considered an interim strategy, a strategy to get the domestic economy to a level in which you can actually depend for the economic activity to be mostly produced by that indigenous enterprise. This government has also allowed for the fact that we are dependent in large terms in corporation tax on about 10 different companies. The CFOs of 10 individual companies could radically determine whether or not we have a big hole in our budget on an annual basis, or a change of the policy in the United States could radically change. So we have a big physical financial exposure in that level of government policy as well. I'll give you another example. In the past few days, I've learned of the indemnification of the vaccine. Now, the vaccine, hopefully, will be the key to getting our country back to normality. And it may well be the case that the government is logically going to indemnify that process, given the massive costs, if it doesn't. But nobody knows in this chamber, actually, who's indemnified, how much they're indemnified for, and what would be the potential cost to the state. It's never been discussed, that particular issue. It's an incredible thing, Minister, that the media and political space is consumed on the issue of tweets at the moment, yet what could be hundreds of millions of euros of potential cost to the state has never been discussed properly in this chamber. TDs have been kept like mushrooms, to be honest, in the dark and covered with manure, unfortunately. I've no, maybe so. I also think that the government, with regards to physical terms, took the wrong decision in terms of the level of stringency it pursued on the lockdown. So, for example, this country was the 6th most strictly locked down country on the planet. So 96% of all countries on the planet decided to have a less stringent strategy. And this was despite the fact that we had the lowest or the second lowest level of COVID in Europe. Now, you'll say correctly that those two things are actually dependent upon each other. We have the lowest or second lowest level because of those stringent restrictions, and that would be wonderful. had there not been a massive cost to those in terms of health as well, in terms of finance, and in terms of society. There's been a massive cost. And I have no doubt, and very few people are actually discussing this issue, but given the history of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, I have no doubt that we're actually heading towards a 2011, 2012 and 2013 situation here. There's no doubt that there will be significant cutbacks in expenditure over the next number of years to achieve balanced budgets and to make some efforts at ordering the runaway debts that this country has entered in over the next while. And when you measure that, it doesn't lead to I suppose, a view that this government has been fiscally responsible. Now, this is called a rainy day fund, but Minister, it's raining on a lot of people already. So, for example, 56 people have died in the state who are homeless this year already. Much more than last year, much more than the year before. Why? Because we haven't built the homes for them. 844,000 people in this country on our waiting lists for healthcare. 612,000 on outpatients. And we're talking about cancer, we're talking about heart disease, we're talking about stroke, and we're talking about mental health. Now, if you're willing to put that money into a rainy day fund and willing to allow that level of ill health, that means the government is actually making a statement financially. It's saying, we tolerate this level of homeless. We tolerate this level of ill health because we have the money, but we're going to put it into a rainy day fund. And what I would say to the Minister is, it is lashing rain on hundreds of thousands of people in this state. And we really need to make sure that we focus the money as soon as we can to ameliorating their existence.
Thank you, Deputy Garmil Marketing.